It doesn't seem like it was really well thought out.
I didn't see anywhere any washrooms. I didn't see any support at all.
Organizers say it went well, but questions remain about what caused all those delays. Plus,
Torontonians keep getting surprised by the fact that the provincial government can rip up our transit plans. They want our local government to be a true local government.
Toronto residents pack a Midtown church to see if there's any way to push back against the province's interference in city affairs. And a blind man who says a realtor tricked him into selling his Toronto home against his will is taking the dispute to court. The latest on this CBC exclusive story. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. Yesterday's Raptors parade helped set a one-day record for the TTC. It says it carried 2.7 million passengers. That's 70% more than its average Monday. And while most involved in the logistics say for the most part the parade was a huge success, there is criticism tonight over what some see as shortcomings in the planning. Our Chris Glover has that story.
You a champ!
The Raptors championship parade will go down in history as a party Toronto should be proud of. Sadly, though, there will forever be an asterisk in the books. A shooting sent people fleeing.
Holding on to the littles to make sure they don't get, they don't fall down. So it's a bit scary.
Christina Whalen-Chabot was with her two daughters. They were all safe, but her friend in another part of the square was trampled.
He's dealing with a torn Achilles right now. And, he's a pretty positive guy, and I think he's feeling pretty down right now about the experience.
I want to make sure everybody stays calm right now.
The party went on, and it was minor in the grand scheme.
I just thought it was a dumb question.
A frustrated chief of police on CBC TV today, fed up with questions of whether his officers were ready.
We had the right resources in place, which had the quick outcomes.
Aside from that one very jarring incident, that the day was overall an extremely successful day.
It was really great. There were so many amazing people out all over the place.
Whalen-Chabot agrees it was incredible, but like many fans, she doesn't understand how there weren't more water stations, bathrooms, or even a medic tent.
I didn't see any support at all.
Many also questioned why fans were not held back along the parade route, the biggest reason why the event was delayed by hours.
I think it was thrown together last minute. That's what it seems like to me. It doesn't seem like it was really well thought out.
It wasn't a security event, it was a celebration.
The city says it took notes, but this was an affair thrown by the Raptors organization.
Ultimately, this is MLSC's party. This was, their event.
No way. This is happening on city grounds. They have a responsibility.
Okay, so she is not letting the city off the hook, but we put all of these questions to Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. They didn't answer any of our questions, but they did release a statement, and in that statement, they said they would be holding debrief sessions to figure out what they could do better next time, because they said they hope and plan to have more championship ceremonies and celebrations like this in the future. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Take a look at this time-lapse video. It was shot from University in King, and it really gives you a sense of how things ebbed and flowed throughout the day without barriers on the street there. Something that fans seemed to love because it meant they were able to get close to their superstars. Well, meanwhile, 3 people are now facing weapons charges tonight in connection to yesterday's shooting during the Nathan Phillips Square rally. But police say they are still looking for a person of interest in connection with the gunplay. Police Chief Saunders cautions the guns his officers seized after the incident do not match bullet casings found at the scene. That raises the possibility that another person and gun may be involved. Shooting happened around 3:45, bullets hitting 4 people. Fortunately, none of their injuries are life-threatening. Police charged 3 people and seized 2 handguns. In a few days, our streets will be filled yet again for another big parade. It's Pride weekend. Now, organizers with both Pride and the upcoming Caribbean Festival say they kept a close eye on the Raptors celebrations to see what lessons they could learn from it. Greg Ross looks at that part of the story.
You look at yesterday and take some lessons away from that?
Absolutely.
Pride Executive Director Olivia Nuama says overall she thinks the city did a good job with the Raptors victory parade, especially considering how little time they had to put it together.
You know that when you turn around a parade in 3 or 4 days, that something is going to get missed.
She says first and foremost, they needed more barriers set up along the route. Fans pushed forward, hoping to get closer to buses carrying players, at times bringing the parade to a complete halt and delaying their arrival at Nathan Phillips Square by more than 2 hours.
The reason for things like barricades, the reason that you have officers placed at intersections is precisely to manage the crowd.
There were also several reports of people suffering from dehydration and heat exhaustion.
There's a lot of things that should have happened that didn't happen yesterday.
Christopher Alexander is the Chief Operations Officer for the Caribbean Carnival. He says with crowds of that size, washrooms and rest areas need to be provided, and organizers need to make sure everything is easy to find.
Enough communication and signage to make sure that people know exactly where they're supposed to go. In terms of the route, marshals along the route to make sure that people know that the parade is coming in this direction, where they should be, where they should not be.
A shooting that injured 4 people cast a dark cloud over the festivities yesterday. Both Nuama and Alexander say you can never have too much security.
We do have not only the Toronto Police Service, we have pay duty, we also have private security companies, we have a ton of them. We also have volunteer security.
We usually have what's called a command center. So we work together with EMS, fire, police, and all the major stakeholders.
They both admit that it's very difficult to organize a parade of that size with an estimated 2 million people being there, and with such limited time to plan, they had to do it just days after the Raptors won last Thursday. They also say Toronto police did a very good job of swiftly getting things under control just moments after that shooting. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Colette Kennedy's here with the first look at the forecast. I know, Colette, this is the week summer officially arrives, and today I had the sense that maybe, perhaps, it might just arrive.
Yeah, like it's on the way, right?
Yeah.
Because it finally feels like we're getting some spring. It's about time. Yeah, just looking ahead, you know what? We have a pretty nice night ahead after a beautiful day today. So calm conditions, midweek return of showers, and what I mean by that is there's the risk tomorrow afternoon of the odd isolated shower. It's actually more towards Thursday. We have the more significant chance of some wet weather coming back. And Mike's quite right. Starting Friday, 11:54 a.m., our June solstice or summer solstice, so summer begins. Ahead tonight, as I mentioned, kind of partly cloudy skies. Then going into the day tomorrow, we will have some periods with some more cloud cover, certainly more than we saw today. So at times we'll get into that. It's not always going to be there. A few isolated showers could show up, but more so to the north of the GTA, really isolated there. So overnight tonight, 15 degrees with those winds fairly light out of the northwest, not much of a factor. And then just that slim chance tomorrow afternoon. Most of it will not be in the GTA in terms of wet conditions, but clouds certainly increasing, and the high temperature 25 degrees. As for the forecast to go along with that first day of summer, we'll take a look at that, Mike, a little later in the show.
Okay, thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Hundreds of people gathered at Barbara Hall Park tonight for the 35th annual Toronto AIDS Candlelight Vigil.
We are looking at what happened in our past and those we've lost in the past to allow those who are living with HIV today to have a longer life through science and through the unfortunate situation and challenges that were faced in the past.
Many showed up tonight to remember those who have died from AIDS or AIDS-related illnesses. The theme this year was yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and it looked at the loss, journey, and suffering in the AIDS movement. It's estimated that 6 people in Canada become newly infected with HIV every day, and that over 10,000 people are currently living with HIV here in Toronto. Well, from cuts to public health to changing the size of City Council, there are many Toronto residents who aren't happy with how Queen's Park is treating City Hall. Tonight, many came together to see if there's anything they can do about it. Natalie Nanowski has the details.
If Doug Ford wants to rename Toronto Ford Nation, he could.
City Councillor Josh Matlow doesn't like how much power the province has.
Torontonians keep getting surprised by the fact that the provincial government can rip up our transit plans, dismantle our election in the middle of an election.
Those aren't the only changes the PC government has made since getting into power. It's defunded some safe injection sites in Toronto and lowered developer fees. So several politicians held a meeting to discuss if and how Toronto might gain some autonomy.
Initially, organizers thought they were going to have a small conversation with a few hundred people, but they had such an overwhelming response that they had to change the venue 3 times.
And tonight, over 1,000 people showed up.
Cutting the size of city council is definitely a pretty big deal as well, because it takes the power away from the people.
We're seeing Toronto being decimated by a very vengeful premier. I've never seen a premier act like this.
There seems to be a particular grudge against the City of Toronto.
Liberal MPP Nathalie Desrosiers has a legal background and believes Toronto should become a charter city like New York.
Giving more power to the city and ensuring that these powers are protected from being overridden by the province.
This would mean Toronto could decide how tall its buildings are, or if it wants to put tolls on its roads. But first, it would need the higher-ups to sign off on the separation.
It's not easy, but it doesn't require the approval of all the provinces. It could only be you could do it with the federal government and the province of Ontario.
The city is still far away from being able to ask for that. The provincial government says the cuts were necessary to eliminate its deficit. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
And we were after 65, the Canadian government says that you're not allowed to own a house after 65 years old.
Too old to own a home? That is allegedly what one realtor told a senior couple, and then they say he sold their home out from under them. The update to our CBC Toronto investigation coming up next. Six people are now facing charges in connection with the shooting from last week that took place just hours after the Raptors won the NBA championship. It happened around 4 in the morning last Friday near a large crowd of fans that were still celebrating the Raptors' win at Yonge and Dundas. Police say the 19-year-old victim had an altercation with another man and then took out a gun and shot him several times. His injuries were quite serious. Police took 7 people into custody. Of the 6 now facing charges, 2 face attempted murder. The 4 others, a variety of gun and drug-related charges. Today, the city recognized first responders who sprung into action during the Yonge Street van attack and the Danforth shooting.
They were traumatic events in many different respects, but at the same time, they showed us the very best of the city in terms of its resilience and in terms of its coming together. But also showed us the very best in terms of the professionalism and courage and compassion of our first responders. And so sometimes while these things seem to be inadequate as a way of saying thank you, we did think it was important to bring together the people who you see here with you today.
The city thanked officers from the Toronto Police Services, Toronto Fire Services, Toronto Paramedic Services, and the TTC Transit Enforcement Unit. The mayor applauded their dedication to duty in the extenuating circumstances of both the van attack and the Danforth shooting last year, a recognition that didn't go unnoticed by the units.
Today was really important for our organization and for the entire emergency responder organization in the city of Toronto. I can tell you that means a lot. It means a lot to our firefighters. I'm confident it means a lot to the police, paramedics, and the transit enforcement officers that were here as well. So we're very appreciative.
Toronto Fire Chief Matthew Pegg, as well as the chiefs of Toronto Police, Toronto Paramedics, and the TTC, accepted awards on behalf of their units. We have an update for you on the exclusive story of a blind Toronto senior citizen who says a realtor tricked him into selling his home. The man is now suing the realtor and a Royal LePage brokerage for more than $1 million over the sale. John Lancaster explains.
Injustice that's been done. That's what's the concern.
73-year-old Harold Verge was born blind. In April, he and his wife moved out of their home on Connaught Avenue near Queen and Greenwood, claiming they were tricked into selling. The lawsuit, which hasn't been tested in court, alleges the Verges were not ready to sell their house just yet, but Royal LePage, Your Community Realty agent Vince Ainello told them they were too old to legally keep it.
Yeah, he said we were, after 65, the Canadian government says that you're not allowed to own a house after 65 years old. No senior citizens are allowed to own their home.
The $1.25 million lawsuit also alleges Ainello never listed the home on MLS, the website realtors frequently use to attract a larger pool of potential buyers. Instead, it was sold to the client of another realtor in Ainello's office for $675,000, well below market value, according to the claim. Lawyer Charles Wagman is representing the Verges.
We think he went too far in what he told the Verges. They're vulnerable people.
Neither Royal LePage, Your Community Realty, nor Ainello has filed a statement of defense yet. In an email to CBC News, Ainello insists he's done absolutely nothing wrong and plans to defend the allegations. As for Royal LePage, they say Ainello is no longer with the company. John Lancaster, CBC News, Toronto.
Still ahead, Canadian astronaut David Saint-Jacques is finishing up his tour aboard the International Space Station. But before he returns to Earth, he had a chat with CBC Kids News.
Every day on board, we are reminded that we are an example, that every day we work together. Every day we prove that when countries decide to put aside their differences, which exist and are true, but when we put aside our differences and focus on what we have in common, we can accomplish amazing things.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Marcus Stroman on the mound for the Jays tonight as they try to respond after yesterday's 10-5 loss to the Angels. Toronto gets on the board in the fourth. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. with a solo drive to left. This makes it 1-0, but Stroman gets in trouble in the fifth. Cole Cahoon ties the game with a monster shot off the right field foul pole. Then Brian Goodwin homers to right center. The Angels would go on to win this game 3-1. Colette is back with her extended forecast. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's weather. I don't know about the rest of the week.
Yeah, it is going to be a little bit wet, it looks like, into Thursday, but not too bad for tomorrow. Just a very slim chance of some isolated showers. But you know what? It's going to be kind of a one-day-only event, and then things improve as we get towards Friday. Our average high at this time of year, 24.1, very close to that today. Look at this record, though. Over 36 degrees, and that's just back in 1994. You would think that'd be a longer standing record. Here's a long standing one. 25 millimeters, just over, of rainfall back in 1944. That's been holding for a very long time. We do have the night tonight where things are pretty calm and some mild conditions too. The temperature a little bit above seasonal for our overnight lows. Clouds kind of building in off and on through the day, especially into the afternoon hours tomorrow, and a few isolated showers to the north of the GTA certainly possible. But it's as we go Wednesday into Thursday, this is how this next system looks like it's going to be building in. So having an impact not only on Lake Erie, but for the shores of Lake Ontario as well, with some heavier stuff perhaps possible coming through the GTA. But I just want to let you know that it may track a little bit further south, and if it does, we'll be seeing some lighter stuff. So watching out for that coming into Thursday, but it looks like a significant chance that we're going to get some wet conditions throughout southwestern Ontario and certainly through the GTA as well for Thursday. Overnight tonight, a quiet night as well for southwestern Ontario with those lows around 13 degrees, 14 for Leamington and for London. And then clouds increasing and some scattered showers, maybe the odd thunderstorm possible tomorrow afternoon, but those temperatures in the mid-20s. It's not going to be rainy everywhere, that's for sure. And the humidex, yeah, again tomorrow feeling closer to 30 degrees. Overnight lows throughout the GTA, including for Toronto, 15 degrees there for the overnight low. Few little exceptions, tiny bit milder in St. Catharines, a tiny bit cooler for Markham. But a look at tomorrow, and mid-20s we're talking about with some cloudier periods, isolated showers kind of here and there to the north of us, primarily into Thursday, though a different story. The winds are going to change direction as well into Thursday, so 21. We may not even get there, but certainly cooler. Friday looking good, though, for that first day of summer. 23 degrees with sunshine. And then Saturday and Sunday at this time looking like we'll have some sunshine, a little bit of cloud building at times, and temperatures close to those mid-20s as well, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Welcome back. Canadian astronaut David Sajak is scheduled to return home next week after 6 months aboard the International Space Station. CBC Kids News contributor Sarah Chaudhry got a chance to speak with him as he prepares to depart the ISS.
CBC Kids News, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
I said, "Station, this is Sarah. How do you hear me?" Right out of a movie.
Houston, this is Station. I'm ready.
When I spoke to you before you left, you said that one of the great things about space training is that everyone gets along regardless of their country's conflicts on Earth. Has this followed through to your space expedition? What is it like up there with people you're working with?
Absolutely it has. You can see behind me the banderole of flags of countries that contributed to the International Space Station. And every day on board we are reminded that we are an example, that every day we work together. Every day we prove that when countries decide to put aside their differences, which exist and are true, but when we put aside our differences and focus on what we have in common, we can accomplish amazing things. And we are very proud here, astronauts, to be demonstrating that every day.
You've been in space for 6 months now. Are you nervous about coming back to Earth for your re-entry?
Well, you know, of course, I've gotten used to this place. So any change is a source of stress in a way. It took me a while to get used to this place here. Learned to fly initially. It was actually not so easy. Now I'm pretty agile, moving around. I can be upside down. It doesn't bother me. I can fly. I can bounce off the walls. And, you know, I never lose my way. But it wasn't like that in the beginning. So this feels like home now. And I know that coming back to Earth, I will have to learn again to live with gravity.
What is your message to us and to young Canadians or young kids all around the world?
Life is a series of experiences, and that, you know, what you do with them is up to you. But the journey is as important, if not more important, than the destination. And I would tell young people, you know, it's important to find the dream that's in your soul. Find that sometimes it's a very, very little voice, and we can be afraid of our dream if it's huge and crazy. Me, I had this ridiculous dream. I wanted to understand everything. That's impossible. I'll never be able to do that. But that led me to go from one degree to the next and explore and learn languages and different cultures. I'll probably never reach my dream of understanding everything, of course, but I'll try. And that dream, which is more of a direction than a destination, is what keeps us moving. All right, bye-bye, Sarah.
Well, before we go, it's Big Week on CBC Radio 1. On Thursday, Anna Maria Tremonti will host her final episode of The Current. Tomorrow, Matt Galloway is going to be speaking to her on Metro Morning right before she goes and records The Current. But she's going to be speaking about what it's like to be stepping away from the daily microphone after 17 years. She's moving on to a CBC podcast series. You can hear Matt's interview with her tomorrow morning, bright and early, about 10 minutes before 7. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Good night.